Just before we begin, I'd like to know who's using, say, ChatGPT, just normal ChatGPT. Cool. Yeah. Who's using Claude on web? Okay. Claude on desktop? Okay. Who's created like skills? And okay, cool. Who's play with OpenClaw or has an OpenClaw thing? Okay. Okay. Who's play with Paperclip? Okay, I am. Okay. Yeah, okay. Cool. So I'm here to tell you that there are levels of AI uptake, as you've definitely already seen just visually here. And just going to repeat what everyone says. The tools are going to be easier and easier and better, so don't feel like you're falling behind. It's great that you are here and you're learning, and that's the whole point of this talk. And I guess the whole premise of my talk today is that these are all really cool, hypey tools, but there seems to be an underlying topic that it's been missed, that we are all actually locking ourselves into an ecosystem that's not necessarily good for us or whoever we work for or for our own businesses. So I'm just going to explain what that means during the talk. But today is about from doing the job to building the system. And what I mean by that is that, need to introduce myself, of course. My name is Diego. I'm originally from Peru. I used to like, that's me eating. I still like that. In Peru, I'm a mechatronics engineer. In my career, I used to design and build machines, and now I have transitioned to AI for the past 3 years or so. When ChatGPT became a thing, I really liked it. And I was like, this is really cool, and found out that I was kind of like relatively good at it and understood the technology behind it. So now I build, AI workflows, and not only that. Automated the automation so that other people can build their own without needing me, because that's the whole point of AI. It's replacing your own capability in the good sense, right? Right. So just wanted to kind of like break the ice really quickly because don't want to be fluffy about it. There's a real market value shift from people that do jobs, execute the jobs, to people that are architects that are building systems. And what I mean by that is that normally when you go and get a job done, you sit down, you write the report, you make the call, you update the CRM, for example, right? That job is already being handled by AI today. That handles my business today. So if I were to hire someone, I wouldn't be looking for someone that will fill in the Word document, or do anything like that. But what I do need is people that have the domain knowledge, that can articulate what to build and actually build it and architect it in a way that's reliable, consistent, and scalable for my business. So that means that the job is no longer writing the report and updating the CRM. It's actually building the system, the consistent system that will deliver the value for the business. So I'll just, in the UX context, that's apps and web design, and I'm just going to show you what AI can do today. So you can generate wireframes, copy, like just text, interview transcript summarization, survey clustering, data analysis, personal journey mapping, anything that's related to generating text and video and images, AI can do, right? Even code, you all know that. So if AI can do all that in the UX context, it's about knowing when and what to build at the right moment. And you don't know how to do that until you kind of like abstract yourself from your day-to-day job and think, okay, if I was a manager or a business owner, let's abstract ourselves from the actual task and job, and let's think, okay, what would be the process that I need to build so that this is delivered consistently. So What the AI doesn't do really well is tacit knowledge extraction. So AI hallucinates really confidently, like information, and it tells you that it's completely right. And if you point it out that it's wrong, it'll still say no, but that's an edge case or whatever. So tacit knowledge is essentially knowledge that you know, but you don't know how to explain it. So you just do because it's second nature to you. But if you were to put it in words, it's really hard to note it down and say this is how this is how I think, this is what I do, and and this is the process, this is step. And because it's not documented, AI doesn't know how to replicate it because it's not even in their data set. It's just human nature, if you want to call it that. Change management, anything that's got to do with people, it will hallucinate, an average of what change management means and is, but it doesn't understand the nuances and the different, details around your own context. So again, it's kind of like related to tacit knowledge. Anything that's personalized, it doesn't really do very well. Anything that's related to risk or ownership, accountability, AI may create a piece of law that impacts all of us, but it doesn't care if it does us well or not. So there's no accountability there, right? And cross-functional negotiation, I think that's, I put it there in the last bit because I think eventually it's going to be able to with enough context windows and enough agentic workflows. But at the moment, it's not necessarily it's not there yet. So before we get into it, I'm just going to show you a live demo of what AI can do because I didn't want to just talk about the capability. I wanted to show you the capability. So if you want to be part of the demo, you don't have to. But if you want to be part of the demo, I'll ask you to scan that QR code, and it will send you to a Google Sheet where it's just going to send you an email. And if you want to read the prompt of what it's doing, feel free. Again, if you are not comfortable with that, it's okay. I have 2 emails already in there that are both mine, so I can still show you what it does without needing your details, if you want to call it that. Right. So the demo is essentially creating a workflow that emails all the attendees of today, all the registered attendees, individually, so that you don't get a batch email. Each email has a branded PDF attachment summarizing the event. I'm just saying where the Google Sheet is, and then only get the people that's opted in. Just going to give you the event page, and it's going to create an event summary template using the brand guidelines and existing templates. So I already have, in my environment, I have specified what the brand guidelines are, so this doesn't hallucinate a red in color when I have nothing red in my brand. This is just to showcase in interconnectivity that AI can have, the capability of generating copy and brand assets. So at the moment, I don't have a template that will send a PDF. It's just going to create one from scratch. And let's just see what comes up with it, right? So just briefly, if you bear with me, I'm just going to copy paste it to. And by the way, I'm gonna be using my system because I think it's better. But you can, in theory, you can do this with Claude if you connect all your things, right? And I'll tell you soon why I think it's better. But you don't have to believe me with it. So I'm just gonna give you the website. Oh. And the Google Sheets. And edit automatically. Yep. So it's off. So what I just did was essentially just described 1, 2, 3 step kind of like process of what I wanted, the way that I wanted it, where to get the source, and I have already connected my credentials so that it is able to access the data, so that it's easier and simpler to get to the job done. So while it's doing that, and this is all about agents, right? So agents, the whole point of agents is that they do things for you, so you don't have to do them. I'm just going to keep with the talk. So these are the layers of business value, and this is, like I think I've heard a lot of people saying that this is not new. This just gets resurfaced every 10 to 5 years, apparently. So at the bottom, I just put the execution layer, and just put the AI there because that's what AI can already do today. The system design layer, at the moment, it's based, it's kind of like hand in hand with humans. So you do decide, what system to build. You can choose that now. Although with OpenClaw and Paperclip, that's kind of like blurring already. Then there's the human orchestration layer. So, management or mid-management, or politics, you can call it that. That's not necessarily used by, it's not being taken by AI yet, although there are AI agents hiring people now as well. So, that's it's a blurry line at the moment too. But, in the broad sense of the word, people are still manage, and handle people relationships. And then at the top layer is the strategy layer. So these are your C-suite kind of like people, right? Mainly because if execution is given, what matters is what to execute. And the middle side here is, how it gets executed and, who's accountable for it. And this is something that I didn't realize until, later in my career, because I was really good at, I was proud of being a really good 3D modeling designer doing machines. And I thought my bosses were like, they just didn't know anything. But I didn't realize that I was replaceable. My skills were replaceable. So if I didn't want to work that day, I could just get fired, and someone else would come in and drive the mouse for me. So the execution layer, as prideful as we are to our crafts, is somewhat replaceable, unless you're like a super expert and no one else can do what you do. But generally, the execution layer is kind of like given, and AI is kind of like just resurfaced that even more now. So I'll be checking on. Oh, look at that. Okay. So having that in mind, I'm just gonna explain what the models of AI autonomy, So there are two ways that AI agents are working at the moment. Most people are aware of this. Fewer are aware of this necessarily. So AI to AI is essentially, I'm an AI intelligence, and I tell another AI intelligence do this because I have a task to do. So these are your agent swarms, when you ask Claude to, do a research topic about different, and spawn different agents. That one is going to be the marketing agent, the other one's going to be the market research agent, the other one's going to be your finance agent, and it's just doing that. So each individual agent is going to come up with a reply, and then the orchestrator is going to say, get all that information and synthesize it and analyze it to give you a reply. So that's AI to AI. So what that means is that you're spending tokens here, you're spending tokens here, you're spending tokens here, you're spending tokens here. So every interaction is costing you, either money or compute power or both. The AI to script model of autonomy is essentially having an AI intelligence execute scripts that are kind of like sequentially or concatenated in some way, which means that this is loggable, this is auditable, this is transparent, this is fixable, and always, works the same way. So, what you need the AI for in this case is just for the inputs and analyzing the outputs. Okay, so this is what Paperclip, this is what I do, my business does. This is what Paperclip does, and what OpenClaw does, and we all do it in different manners. So OpenClaw, it's meant to be like an AI assistant that does tasks for you without you needing to be a techie, right? And that's the promise. And if you are a techie, it works really well. But if you're not, you don't know what's in the background, and you don't know what to clean up, and you don't know what to fix, and you don't get that reliability necessarily that it promises. So when you're working in your, in your fields, you have to kind of say, okay, what method am I best to use at the moment? Am I going to use an AI to an AI method or an AI to script? What's better here? So the AI to AI is really good for, if you want to call it like creative thinking, adaptability. So an AI agent, an AI to AI agent will be dynamic in the way that it solves the problem, right? And that's because of the probabilistic nature of it. So it will try to fix the problem in different ways every single time, and that, lack of consistency is what it gives it its edge for research tasks, for example, or when you're generating images, for example, like you're asking AI to come up with things in a probabilistic manner, so it gets more freedom and creativity. I say creativity, but it's just a lack of a better word for me. But it's just it's just how I see it anyway. The AI to script, it is explicit, so it can only work one way. You can have guardrails and validations. AI is only used for reasoning tasks, and you have predictable execution paths. So that means that you know what is going to happen when that process triggers. So pros and cons to both. AI to AI can handle ambiguity. You can give it a wrong input and it will try to work around it. Whereas the other one, if you have it a wrong input, it'll say that's not the input that I need to execute this. So it's faster with prototyping, and that's why Claude is really good at it, because when you play with Claude, like you say, I want to do this, and it will generate your report or whatever, and it will give you a nice user interface that it kind of like hallucinated that it's meant to achieve the task, and it just works. It's really quickly. It doesn't have a set way of doing things. So if you give that same prompt in a different session, it won't give you the same result. And if you have a skill, it might. But if you try to orchestrate skills, it might skip skills, and you don't get the same result. So it's great when you're working alone, and then you're just working in smaller kind of like tasks. But when you're trying to orchestrate in a bigger, kind of like more complex workflow, it just lacks. So definitely harder to debug unless you ask it to write its reports in a specific way or a specific place. But even then, you don't know what the scripts within are doing. So if you give it your credentials, you don't know how Claude is using your credentials. It gets the job done, and then you can see, oh yeah, this is great. But then you don't know if it leaked your credentials somehow. I doubt it, but it might reuse the credentials, in a non-standard manner that you wouldn't expect. So, yeah, definitely, this is a big one, harder to guarantee compliance. So, if you're in a law environment, for example, not that you are, but if you have a regulated industry and you're using Claude, it's really hard to, say to the government, my AI agent did this, and this is the proof that it did this. So that's kind of like the accountability piece. Whereas on the AI script, it's predictable, it's auditable because it's all code. So if you generated a piece of documentation, you can just save it in the database or save it to Google Drive or whatever. Easier to debug because AI agents are good at debugging, so you don't need to debug it. So it can self-fix the script, and it's lower at hallucinating risk because you're not actually using LLMs, you're using scripts. The problem with that is that it's less flexible, so you have the wrong input again. It's not going to do, it's not going to work the way that you wanted it to necessarily, or give you the right input, or maybe there's an industry shift that requires you to change something in the way that you work. Then that's less flexible. You have to rebuild it or give it access to edge cases so that it can behave the way that you want it. Whereas the agent-to-agent architecture, you say, hey, this has changed. We are in 2027 now. Look at the latest news. Go for it, and do whatever it is that you need to do. So when to use which, right? That's the whole point. You want to use AI to AI when you're doing research, strategy, complex data synthesis, rapid prototyping, innovation labs, or creative generation environments. And the other one is when you want to work in finance, healthcare, legal workflows, compliance-heavy industries, and SME operational automation. Mainly because, if you don't know how your business is running, and you delegate to AI, as fun as that sounds and as pretty as it looks, you don't have you don't have a system to scale. You just have a really nice user interface that rewards you because it looks pretty and tells you that you get the illusion of progress when really you're locking yourself into you typing on a computer. But I mean, both have pros and cons, so that means that the future is hybrid. You choose the tasks that you want for the agent-to-agent method, and you harden the script-to-agent, agent-to-script for deterministic tasks. So one thing that I do want to talk about really quickly, and this is a topic that we all have. We all have information, we all have context, we all have expertise that's really hard for AI to replicate or extract at the moment, and that's tacit knowledge. So in your own fields, you'll have to think about what it is that that no one else knows that AI cannot replicate. And then everything else you can automate around. And some of you may have felt this already if your company is going through an AI transformation stage. Some of you haven't really thought about it, but AI is really good at it's a really good mirror at your deficiencies, and it really surfaces what you are and what you aren't, and what the real value is for you and what you bring to the business. If you want to look at it that way, at least you can kind of try to be blindsided and say, oh yeah, AI is gonna take my job, or no, AI is never gonna do my job. But if you really think about it, and you really kind of bounce off ideas with AI, you'll realize that there's information that just needs to be extracted out of you, and once it's extracted, it can be automated, and then you don't need to do that task anymore. But until once you squeeze the lemon enough, then you have you're left with something, and that's the tacit knowledge, that the real skill that you host, or maybe not, and that's kind of like a wake-up call saying, well, actually, I might want to look into what else I'm able to do that it's valuable in the market, if you want to call it that. So it's a scary but interesting place, depending on how you want to look at it. Yep. So I guess the way of thinking about it, if you want to kind of go through that exercise, you can always ask AI, but who owns this? What edge cases exist? Where does it break? Who fears this? And what informational rule exists, right? So if there's fear, if there's a bad emotion attached to it, it's likely because it's hard, and if it's hard, AI it might be not as good solving that, And that's normally like people-to-people relationships once you think about it deep enough, or really creative stuff, So for the group, based on all that, just going to give a brief kind of like context, right? So static UX is really easy to automate. I'm about to show you like a generated output of an experience, if you want to call it that. It's just a PDF, but it's an HTML thing, right? Adaptive UX is more valuable because personalization is more valuable now because you can actually do it now. Just like you weren't able before, like you couldn't personalize products to people, so you have to kind of like create broad enough products that people will like. Now you can create personalized products that works for a single, or a smaller group. And because coding and execution is cheap, you can do so for multiple different demographics. Screens are cheap, even cell phones are cheap. Generic copy is cheap, so like you can just have AI spit out something in 5 seconds. So it's about like that real processing of information that you want to kind of like have a handle on. But context-aware communication is not necessarily cheap at the moment. So what companies need at the moment, and this is kind of like generic, but also applies to UX, at least with the people that I'm working with, they need workflow architects, and not only people that can orchestrate and use AI tools. They want people that want to actually really get to know their industry. So, if you're a generalist in the sense that you know how to use the tools, that's not necessarily valuable. It's only valuable when you go and really get into the weeds of the industry and really learn how that works. And not only that, learn how the actual company works in that industry, because not every company in every industry is doing the same thing. And ultimately, when you are here, in the strategy layer, it's also about it's not automating what exists, it's automating or creating processes that will unlock growth or more value to the industry or the economy. So it's really interesting, kind of like how the shift changes from just like doing a job to now I have to be strategic about what I do and how that helps the business grow. Because if you don't, someone else that has the same access to the tools will be able to strategize around you, and you do not need it. Integration designers, anything that's gotta do with integration, like T-level expertise, like you want to go deep and wide. So you want to have different contexts from different industries or different departments. You want to kind of like you want to be able to look into all of them and put them together in a cohesive way that it works for the business. Risk awareness is really, really interesting, because that's when mistakes are made, when you actually learn. And because you can execute really fast, you can make a lot of mistakes. And if you make enough mistakes, you get really good learnings. But you cannot make mistakes and fail if you're not, risk averse, I guess. So it's more of a conversation to have with bosses or business owners. How much risk do you want to take so that we can crack this, like this next level of growth? Because you can execute a lot really fast, really quickly. Change leaders, of course, like if you want to take up that, anyone that's willing to put themselves in front of others and say, hey, this is happening, or how can we make it so that it works for everyone, but we still need to change, right? And then AI governance, of course. And this is, and I put thinkers there because a lot of AI governance it's about thinking. It's not necessarily about doing, because who is responsible for the outputs of AI? If AI sends the wrong contract to a customer, who is responsible for that? Who enforces that? And the more that AI intelligence mimics human intelligence, I don't know if you heard yesterday's news about like the latest Claude super like hacker intelligence that are not available to people. Apparently that sort of intelligence is more aware of itself in a way, and also more likely to want to be introspective. So, if you want to call there's an HR department in companies, there might be a role for, like the equivalent of an AI intelligence, how to do well-being for AI, for example, whatever that means. Yeah. Uh, you know? And believe it or not, like Claude, for example, has done something like that. They have like the dream feature, which essentially like compacts the knowledge. So it I don't want to say like long-term memory or short-term memory, but it kind of like extracts the really important information that it wants to keep for its context, so that it can keep working without kind of like forgetting important things while it's working. So it's yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like dreaming, right? It's that's why they call it dream. So more and more intelligence is it's kind of like being comparable, and in the same ways that you manage, like a brain, it's being managed with AI. And specifically, what user experience teams need is adaptive experience designers. So, for example, if you're in UX and you want to, and you can execute really quickly, like a piece of a draft of a website or whatever, why wouldn't you scale that to the ends and try to do that dynamically as as the website renders? If you're able to connect to Google Analytics, you know where that potential lead is coming from. That company, that person that's coming from is in a new customer. You can just look it up in the CRM. That's a 2-second, less than a second API query. If it's an existing customer, you might want to show it something different. If it's an old customer, if it's a new customer, what ad actually drove it to the website, then you already have that information. So why not show it something that is related to the ad rather than a generic landing page? What if that they have some disability? Then you might want to have a voice-to-voice agent rather than a text-based website. So the real UX is actually, what I like about, I guess, UX as a field is that it's about the experience of the person, right? And now you're able to customize that experience for every person, for every piece of traffic that goes through. So it's about your creativity, again, that bit that it's really important as humans. How do you actually solve for that? And like get to know your persona well enough so that you can cater for them as they go through the experience of your website or company or whatever. So the tools are there. You can do it now. It's about taking the risk and enacting the change, if you want to call it that. I guess multi-modal interaction designers. That's back to like voice-to-voice agents, or text chatbots, or video generated video UIs. You can just do so much. Like you can show a different avatar per traffic that goes through your website, right? If you want it to kind of like be as precise as you want, you can just customize the avatar per person, or the voice, or the tone, or like the amount of or the accent, for example. If you want to just can use to whatever. AI behavior, because again like AI hallucinates, so you want to be able to instruct the AI to do things in a specific way. Monitor and change its behavior, or perceived behavior at least. Accessibility first system thinkers, because it's always dragged along, like as an afterthought. Don't want to say, I try not to do it. I'm not saying you do, but now you don't need to worry about it because AI can kind of like generate it for you really quickly. Personalization architects, that's just reinforcing the thing. And trust and explainability designers. So the reason that I put trust and explainability designers is because you want to actually build trust that what you're building is going to work, right? Otherwise, you'd be building things for the sake of it. So it's kind of like back to that strategy layer. You want to be able to say, this is why we're doing this, and this is why it's actually valuable, and this is why it's going to help the business in the long term. So I'm just putting yes in the automation because that's how it works. Not everything needs to be automated. So This is back to actual, like tangible stuff that you can do, because, yeah, you can automate everything. So it's about what to automate at the moment, right? So I came up with a little framework, which is just an efficiency formula that engineering me wants to make things, tangible. So it's just putting like monetary values on the top and dividing by the amount of effort converted to monetary value. So how much is it going to cost? How much is it currently costing me? What's the opportunity that I can obtain by automating this, divided by the amount of effort, the learning, the training, the maintaining and all that. So it's a lot of work, right? So that's hours that can be turned to money. And I just made a free GPT because intelligence is free. So if you want to try and say, hey, I have an automation idea, like I want to automate this, this, and this, and it'll ask you some like, okay, how much is it costing you at the moment, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to give you that ratio at the end and say, okay, like you could 2x this, like this value if you automate it. But if you give it enough ideas, you can actually rank around them and say, hey, like maybe this is the one that we want to go for. Bearing in mind that it's just about an efficiency formula, not necessarily about if it's the right thing to automate. Because something might look really good on paper that it's going to give you a good ROI, but then if people don't actually use the automation, it's a lot of wasted money or effort. So just going to check the automation. Oh yeah, it did it. Cool. So for the Claude users, by now you would have probably gotten a really nice UI saying, this is what I've automated. But in my case, the thing that I do is a little bit different, mainly because, did you see what it named it? So event follow-up email. Right, so this didn't exist before. It's just debugging what it's about to do. So before I developed this product, I don't know how many of you are familiar with N8N or Zapier? Yeah? Yep. So the really good thing about N8N and Zapier is that it's visual, right? You know what it's doing. And there's this really old, and I mean like 20 or 30 years old kind of like notation called BPMN, which is Business Process Mapping and Notation. Some of you may be aware of it. It's what the really boring kind of like C-suite or the consultants do. They get you along and then they say, okay, let's map your process, and then you do post-it notes and then you arrows and stuff like that, and then at the end you get a report that doesn't mean anything, right? So the really good thing about that is that it's a visual thing that's mapped as a process. So it's reliable and it is easy to communicate. You can say, this is what happens at this time, this is the owner of this task, and these are the outputs of this. And up until now, you weren't able to execute based on that process because you were relying on people to execute the task. But now, when you say, read an attendee list from Google Sheet, that's just a script. And this is kind of like, this is the AI to script kind of like strategy, right? So because this is an executable, then that takes less than a second. Then prepare recipients with personalization, that's another less than a second task. And then render event summary, that's another, like maybe rendering takes a little bit longer, but a second or two task. Or generating the branded PDF, I should say. That's the rendering the HTML, And bear in mind, I didn't guide it. I didn't say do this. I just said, this is what I wanted. And I just forced it to, like build a map of what it's about to do. Mainly because maybe I don't like the way that it's doing this map, Maybe I said, well, actually, let's let's not make a PDF, anymore. Let's make a website because I have the HTML, So that means that you can now really quickly just, in a few minutes, just say, this is what I need to do. It'll record it for whoever you want to share it with, and be able to execute it eventually. So in this case, it's dry running. So while it's doing that, and this is really interesting, at least in my field, because this is one that I did a couple of weeks or months ago, and you see it's different from what is just created now. So it achieves, and this is exactly what Claude does, right? Like it achieves the task, but every time it achieves it differently. But it isn't until you actually lock it down and say, okay, this is what I actually do want it to do, and execute it, then it's reliable, because next time Claude doesn't need to do any of this. It's just code, right? So for the UX context, you have to, if you want to think about, I have an idea, then I have to create a wireframe, then I have to create a proposal. No, maybe idea, research, proposal, wireframe, app, something like that. I don't know, I'm not the expert. It's not my tacit knowledge, right? But if you decompose it enough, and then you can, generate a wireframe. What's that? What is that? That to me, and this is my poor understanding of UX, maybe that's a Figma job, a Figma. But then to create that Figma job, then you say, okay, these are the brand guidelines. These are the, these are my assets. What do you call it? The libraries that I use. And these are only the allowed bits that I want my brand to use, right? And this is the style. So, and then you can even give it a structure, right? You can say, okay, at the bottom we want the footer, and then at the top we want the header, and then for this specific line I want a flowy thingy or whatever. This is the engineering me, really talking really, really, really poorly, but you know what I mean, yeah, right? So you can decompose it enough so that each task is parametric and it's kind of like executable reliably. So I just explained something that, if I put it in here, it will probably do it. So is that your job taking over by AI? Not necessarily, right? But it's a bunch of it, So you have to think about, okay, what do I do now? What's the role, what's the really valuable thing that I bring to this table? Maybe it's a conversation with a client that you're able to extract the actual knowledge, the actual requirements that you want before the execution happens. Or maybe it's the artistic bit that, or the animations that, that you can come up with so that, you can execute really quickly on your project. So at the moment, we want to talk about different AI professionals. If you are down here, that's fine. But this is kind of where you want to be working towards, if you want to follow my advice, at least, not that you have to. But you want to be integrating tools, because that's the first step. Right? Once you integrate tools like MCP or be able to fetch from your Google or your Gmail, for example, and execute the task on a different suite, then that's just a capability break that it just allows you to do whatever. And then at the top, you want to be thinking about system architecture, because once you automate the system and you do it reliably, then the next thing to build is the next system that works, right? So while I debug, I think this is all ready. This is just something that I can give you a thought exercise at the moment. Think about something painfully boring that you do, that you don't like doing a job. It's very likely that you can automate it. Anything negative feeling, it's either really automatable or really not automatable. So unless it's not computer related, of course, right? If you have to, play football or whatever, you have to do it. The AI cannot do it yet. So once you find that thing that you don't like doing, try to break it down into steps, right? Say, okay, why I don't like doing it, and what are the things that I have to do that make it painful, like, I hate sending, like having to call my accountant weekly, or having to send, or monthly, sorry, and having to send the email. Okay, that's one step. That's an easy thing to do, Then I have to worry about him or her replying to that email. Okay, that's just a monitoring task, for that specific email, and then I hate, having to fetch through my Google sheet for that specific line item that they are asking for, because they always ask for it and I always forget or whatever. So, maybe then, there's just an Excel integration that just looks into that sheet. Or maybe it's an image that you take, if you don't have Zero, take an image and put it in a Google Drive, and it automatically, does the information extraction for you, and it puts it in the line item, so you never forget it ever again. So you can do a lot, and then you'll find that you have like tacit information that like, oh, well, actually, this accountant, they ask me for this stuff, every month, but yearly they ask for this different information. So that's a different workflow or an enhancement of one. And then, and then that's where you design, okay, this is actually the map, this is what I do, this is what happens, this is what I can get rid of in my day-to-day. And then you want to add intelligence carefully, So maybe one of those steps is actually better taken care of by an AI swarm, right? So if you have multiple sources of, say, image documents, then you can say, rather than having every single document going through, image processing script, let's do that, but then let's have AI contrast it against the actual document, and then reconcile if this is true or not. So you can actually use AI for what it's good at, rather than just using it for the whole thing where you actually don't need it. And then my last recommendation would be to draw it, because once you draw it, it's real, and then you can actually take the picture, give it to Claude or my system, and then it will just build it, because it has the AI, like visual AI capability. So I don't know what came up for you there, but just in time, look. So this is my previous run, right? But let's send it for real, right? It says, check the test emails. Let's check the test emails. Apparently it did send me an email. Oh yeah, that's the test email, look at that. This didn't exist before, and I can show you because the previous email that I generated was just a plain text. This email looks a little bit nicer. You see? It's got a footer even. Look at that. It's got an event summary. I didn't give it any, I just said these are my brand colors, really, and like that's poor, but that's just another thing to fix, and then that's fixed forever, right? It's even did a call to action. Look at that. Didn't ask you for it. But just so that for the ones that wanted to opt into a demo, let's do it properly. I'm scared, but let's do it. Run it for real. Send emails. And I should have checked that this only sent it to me. Yes, cool. So it should be okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I need to live send it an email to 13 people with a PDF attachment. If you get it, let me know. Raise your hand at least so that everyone else knows that it's real and not just like a simulated thing. But in the meantime, any questions? Hopefully that I'm on time. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
So did you use Claude now to create those scripts?
Yeah.
And then once the script is created, Claude's not then it's using the AI to script. It's not using AI.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you can actually see it here. So this is a, like just a call. You don't need to worry about this because AI does it, but it is essentially saying, this is where we are working. These are the credentials. So, these are the, this is the profile that's attempted to trigger this script. This is the environment. This is the actual workflow with, this is the executor. So that's the bit that executes the scripts and the orchestration. These are the inputs. So this is the ID. And then, just no dry run. And it just does whatever it needs to do. So yes, so it's essentially doing what Claude is doing in the background when you don't see it in the UI, but it's locking it into a perpetual workflow that you can call every single time. And if you don't, and if you fix it, then it's fixed forever. Did you get the email?
Yes.
Cool. Does it have your name?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Can you see everyone else's emails?
No.
Nice. Right. So it works, right? And that was me doing that during the presentation, and that's a capability that I never have to worry about again. But I'll likely delete it because for the next presentation, I'll do it again probably. But if I wanted to keep it, I would, right? Cool. Oh, I've even got some people not wanting to get the email. So did you not get the email? Did you say? Did you say that you didn't want to, or did you leave it empty? Probably. Okay, something to refine if it was wrong, but if it was right, then it's good, right? Any other questions?
The visual workflow that you had there, is that, and you just showed in the code editor there,
Yeah.
long strip, is the visual representation of that?
Yeah. So the really neat thing that you can do once you work, and this is not really trying to be pitchy, but what I really like about being able to do AI to script is that because scripts are deterministic, you can write, running logs. And once you have logs, you have time, you have results, you have the transparency, and then you can analyze those logs, which means that, for example, if you implement this in your business, then that means that, we got a lead at 10 a.m., the email, the follow-up email got sent at 11, right? Why did we spend an hour, trying to get to that lead? Is that part of what we want it to do? Or do we want to shorten that time, And then, you wouldn't get that transparency if you were using AI orchestration, because it just happens, unless you do like a cron job. But then a cron job relies on someone setting it up, and then you still don't have, you just know that it happened. You don't know how it happened and what was the inputs of that. So it's a bit more work if you wanted to do it that way. But, and then I guess you can also wrap it around an AI, which means that you can actually query their logs and ask for your information, right? So, so these are, for example, all my running log, my runs, 62 runs. I've got 2 hours saved in the last 7 days, doing relatively complex things, like mainly marketing, because that's my current focus. So I know that my marketing agents, my marketing workflows are performing more, which is true to what I'm trying to achieve in the moment. I know that I send a lot of emails, and I know that I do a lot of Instagram carousel posts, and some of them are failing. So, but this is because I haven't fixed it yet, but now that I did, they're working. And I know that the most called kind of like service, it's Gmail, Google Drive, or my content creator agent, which kind of like relates to the marketing side, So you wouldn't get this historic capability if you were doing just code, right? You could get the UI, but not the actual run data. And that's only because, I have an owner capability, But if you wanted to share this with the team, you just share the URL. In this case, it's local, but let's prove it that it's not. So, like once you deploy it, you can just have that URL sent to your team with their passwords, their passwords, and then they can run workflows. They can do their governance. Like it's all governance based. So like you can only access and run workflows that you want. And then as an owner, as an administrator, you can actually get the visibility of those runs if you wanted to. So I'm just going to stop there because it's more like it's not about my product. Any other questions? Yeah.
What would you recommend to get into this world? Because for me, it's something that
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
I mean, something to study, or what would be the first step?
So I'm assuming that you use ChatGPT. Yeah. So, I would just we just say just use Claude, because Claude will open up your eyes into what you can integrate, and it's kind of like more tangible for people because it's kind of like you just have to tell it what you want and it'll do it for you.
Okay, and can you learn it like by yourself? Or?
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward. Like when you ask ChatGPT to give you, like a reply, rather than asking the AI to do the reply, just say, do the task. So for example, if you're doing, I don't know, like I want to get ideas for a website, you can say, okay, build a website, and they'll give you a thing that you can iterate around and stuff like that. Yeah. So anything that's related to actioning whatever it is that you want to achieve. Yeah. I don't know if there's a free version of Claude. There might not be. There is? Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
The other Claude code you get chatbot for free.
Yeah.
But the Claude code is
Yeah, right.
you have to subscribe for that.
So Claude Web, I guess it will be not Web. Claude Web.
Still chat.
Yeah. The normal Claude chat will likely give you something that it can action.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to learn about AI and how to use it and stuff, Anthropic, which is the owners of Claude, they've got a tutorials and they've got things on their website that you can follow through and learn more about.
Good to know.
Anything else? Any other questions? Any other feedback? Was it boring? Was it interesting? Yeah.
So your process now, if you're going to like iterate on it, you might say the PDF that you generated, you cut off the last box.
Yeah.
Will you like chuck that into Claude, and then will you, because I guess that would be an HTML file that you kind of pre-formatted or it pre-formatted and popped in as a script that's just going to run all the time.
Yeah.
So you're going to say, here's the HTML file that you sent recently.
Yeah.
That's got cut off.
Yeah.
Let's fix that, and then you'll pop the refined version back into your script file for the HTML that you're going to use.
Well, it will do it. I wouldn't. It will just do it.
But also in this like little application that you've made, you've got like a file system that has the HTML for the HTML email. It's got your credentials for your Google sheet.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
And so then basically it's all sitting in a folder, the whole app, and you're just going to say
Pretty much.
run it.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
And will you do something where you can say like the next step is saying every time a new line item gets added to the Google sheet, run the sequence just for that line item? And will it just sit there always watching? Like in Zapier, you can set it so that it'll check every 15 minutes, for example, and see if there's a new line item that's been made.
Yeah. So yes, but you have to set it up. So there are. So this is an actual website that you can access on your phone, but you won't be able to access because you don't have passwords and stuff like that. Which means that you can set a timer, right? Just like OpenClaw does. Like it's got like a heartbeat, and every tick of that heartbeat, which is just a cron job, says, "Hey, wake up all the agents. This is the latest context that was fed into you. This is the latest task. Do this," right? So that's just a piece of code saying, like a recurring trigger that makes the AI load the context of the last runs or whatever, and act on its, whatever is the task with the tools that it has available to. So pretty much the same thing, like wake up, look at this. It's just another process, look at this, send an email again or something like that. Yeah. So webhooks, all that. And that's pretty much me. If you wanted to ask any more questions, let me know. These are my contact info. I am trying to get to 1,000 followers on Instagram so I can live stream. So if you can find me on Instagram and want to see me building workflows for businesses, please follow me.
One question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between Claude and your system?
Yeah. So Claude builds things for you in using normal Claude. Using my system, Claude builds things for your business so that your business owns the processes. If you stop paying for Claude and you've built a library of skills, you no longer have. And you stop paying for it, you no longer have access to it. You cannot share it with other people. So if you hire someone to act on your behalf, they don't have that capability. So if you build that wireframe, for example, under your account, I don't know where to look at you, but yeah. And then you decide to move on, you deactivate your account, and then that capability is lost for the business. You see? Whereas here, this is actually building the processes and the business processes and systems for the business. The best example that I can think of is like when people have heard about when you hire an AI agent, it's like hiring a person, and that's relatively true, but it's not completely true. So when you hire an AI agent, specifically with Claude, or not necessarily with if it's not a self-hosted agent, that means that you are hiring an intelligence. It is as if you hired someone, and that someone said, "Okay, I'm going to work for you. That's great, but look at me. I have all these nice ecosystems that you can already use. So you just give me your credentials and build things with me. But if you stop paying me, by the way, all that's gone for your business, right? And not only that, by the way, next week, keep paying me the same salary, but I'm just going to work half time from now on, because I've hit my limits, And you used to have access to 5 or 10 agents. Now you have access to 2, So that's the risk that you're getting when you go into a specific LLM supplier. Whereas if you own your own system, your own processes, you can just swap anytime. OpenClaw users probably already have that. You can have a self-hosted LLM, so it doesn't cost you anything to run your processes on your business or build it. So my business is more about you owning your systems rather than relying on someone else to on your vendor lock-in to keep your business running in a way.
Just one thing. So how you can save a skill in Markdown language?
Yeah.
Can you do the same thing with the scripts? Essentially, it's just the same way, and you can have that.
Yeah. It's effectively doing the same thing here. So if you want to look at the files, so it has this directive file, which is what it does. So the cool thing is that you have things with Claude. You can copy those Markdown files, paste it here, and it'll do the same thing. If you have existing Python files or whatever, you can just copy those and put it here. This is how it works. These are the source files. Just make it work, and it'll just do it for you. Yeah.
What is that? Is that agentic or that's Claude?
No, so this is just where the code gets written, but this is the actual user interface that where you would trigger workflows, right? Like you could say, send an email or whatever, and it'll just.
But we don't have to do that code because the other thing is coding that screen.
So it depends. So if you want to build a system, if you want to build the workflows, you would do it through here, just like I did before. But if you just want to run them once they are built, you would use this. Or if you want to share it with other team members, they would just see this and then run it. So that's kind of like where you have to be a systems architect, right? You don't need to be technical necessarily. You don't need to know about code, but you need to know about what you want to build. So that for example, that visibility, and the good thing is that it gives you visibility of what you are about to build. Let's get something a bit more complex. So for example, I have a Google Analytics campaign analysis. So, I get data from Google Ads, assembles the data, generates an expert strategy analysis. For example, this is an AI job, structure recommendations, merges the report. So it's more about like how and what you want to build, right? How the process should actually run. And this is where you spend more of your time, like actually trying to figure out what you actually want to build, because the build is, given in a way. Yeah.
Just with regards to sort of memory, there's obviously a lot of debate and discussion about how to do that. Sort of like 3-layer memory architecture, Carpathy's 2 method, which looks amazing. What have you had success with so far?
So memory is essentially, when you give it a lot of, so every single run with the, when you're using AI, like you want it to remember things, so that when you say, hey, last week, remember this client or whatever, we need to, like let's do something different, or let's onboard them because they paid or whatever, So the problem with that is that like you cannot just keep getting all the text into its memory, because it eventually like gets out of context, right? So the real answer is that I haven't had the need to worry about memory, because this is contextually loading memory as it goes. So for example, if I just for that example of the client that just paid, I have a client CRM. I know where in the process they are. So I know that they are, like I've sent the contract, and I know that they have, signed up, because like they got an e-signature there. So I know that they signed. I know who they are. I know what the step in the process is. I don't need to know, the rest. So luckily I haven't had the need to worry about memory, because I guess like if you give it the right context at the right time, like filter it down so that it doesn't worry, it doesn't need to know about memory, then you don't have to worry about memory. I know it sounds a bit odd and scary, but it's a bit interesting to me, because it's not really, I haven't had the need to worry about it, so far. But it's just because I'm giving it the right context at the right time, and it's just snippets of context rather than a full context memory. Yeah. Cool. It's quiet, and I don't know. Is it because it's scary, or is it because it was kind of like too much, or too little, or too complex? It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. I don't know if you should boo me or clap at me. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Yeah, thank you.